Black Live. Brian did not get under the bell there with the coffee slurping here. It's cold in Lafayette.
It is cold in here.
It's cold in here. It's
my
gray
bad.
in West Lafayette, but you have got the next best hour of your life here. Golden Black Live. Kyle Charters, Brian Newbert. You can read the board. And we have a football game tomorrow that we shipped Stacy out. She is probably landed by now. I don't know. She's not.
I think her flight is like in 20 minutes.
Okay, then well, she's
So
still on the
90
ground
close.
then. So Purdue plays Maryland tomorrow. We've talked about it about as much as you can on our website through Golden Black Radio and everything, all the seemingly dozens of stories this week. But guys, this is a big game for Purdue. I know that we talked earlier about this not, kind of under radar because nobody outside of Purdue and Maryland is going to pay a whole lot of attention to this game, but it's a big game for Darrell Hazel if he has any chance of turning this thing around. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I just think you have to, at some point, start building on what happened the week prior.
Yeah.
And we have not seen that. I mean, we know he has not won 2 games in a row while he's been at Purdue. And, every time they've had an opportunity to have sort of a statement game, and I'm not sure this would qualify as that, but it would qualify as at least a sentence, I suppose. They've fallen flat. And, I think this gives them an opportunity to get off to a good start, maybe give him a little bit of leeway, going to Illinois the next week. And, at least you could start to build an argument then that things were headed in the right direction. But if they lose, then the other argument's pretty easy, I think.
Even though they're 2-1, Brian, the job security front, and we know that it's the elephant in the room. It's been said that all along, but that's why this game is important to get to 3-1, because you just look at that schedule and you say, just where are you going to find 6-7 victories enough to show that you're improving, and that's why tomorrow's important.
Yeah, we all know what the deal is here. Darrell Hazel has to deep down know what the deal is here. I mean, they've won 7 games in year 4 now, and you have to do something pretty significant this season to get year 5. And I'm not even sure what something significant would be given the
it's hard to define.
circumstances, given the user-friendliness of the schedule, given the fact there's a new AD here, given the fact you got to get your fan base back on some level. And, this start of Big Ten play, going to Maryland, who wasn't very good last year, is a cosmetic 3-0 right now, and then coming home to play Illinois, and then a very beatable Iowa team. If you can't make some hay here early in the Big Ten season, that's your chance right there out the window to do something significant this season. And one would think that takes Darrell Hazel down a very precarious road.
Yeah, and of course, the schedule is conducive to winning just because of, but Maryland is interesting that we talk about enthusiasm or energy that's been brought to the program with DJ Durkin, and they had a big overtime win 2 weeks ago. Central Florida, we all may know how bad Michigan beat them, et cetera, but this is a team that in Maryland that has got some explosive players. Certainly William Likely III, a stable of running backs. What makes you think Purdue can get the job done?
You changed directions there.
I know. That's why I want you on your toes here. You were already to answer.
I was going to say that I think Maryland's coached better. I mean, they got a bunch of former head coaches, who I guess failed, but former head coaches on their staff, and they're playing a lot better. They're not turning the ball over. Their offense, seems to be able to move the ball. They've generated a good rushing attack with 5 or 6 guys now when you add Wes Brown in there as well. So I think they're coached better. They're playing better. They haven't beaten anyone yet, but 2 games on the road I think is impressive. Part of the 3-0 start. Now, what was your actual question?
What makes you think Purdue's, and what does Purdue have to do to?
Well, I think Purdue has moved the ball on offense. They've got almost 1,500 yards. They're ranked 3rd in the Big Ten in yardage, but they haven't scored. They're ranked 9th in the Big Ten in scoring. If they can hold on to the ball, especially in some of those critical situations, 4 of those turnovers have come inside the 21-yard line, and start to put some points on the board reflective of the yardage, then I think Purdue can play certainly in these type of games. I don't think that's a question. It's just a matter of whether they're going to continue to be able to make winning plays toward the end of games. You saw it against Nevada, but they would have to do it a couple weeks in a row here, and there hasn't been a lot of evidence to suggest they can.
From an offensive perspective, I think the biggest issue still lies on defense, but from an offensive perspective, I think can Purdue continue to make big plays? I think when you make big plays, that takes a lot of pressure off a turnover-riddled offense. That's less opportunities you're putting the ball in the air, less opportunities to put the ball on the ground. And I think Purdue obviously is going to have very little margin for error all year long. And if they keep turning the ball over the way they've turned the ball over in 3 games and gotten away with it, especially against Nevada, however you say that word, that's not going to happen again. If you turn the ball over 5 times against anybody in the Big Ten, probably anybody in the Big Ten, you're going to lose that game. And Purdue's just got to take care of the football. And this has been a program for years now that's been subject to inexplicable just rashes of all kinds of different turnovers. And right now you worry if they're not standing on the cusp of that again.
Yeah,
Well,
minus
what-
9 in the last 2 weeks. So go ahead.
What you sort of
2
worry
games.
about is something else springing a leak too. I mean, the offensive line, I think they've sort of danced with the fire there a little bit. Blau's only been sacked once, but I think that's a credit to him
Yeah.
a little bit. He's had an ability to escape the pressure and, keep his eye. I think it's a pretty good skill he's got. He's been able to run around a little, keep his eyes up and make some plays down the field. But at some point, the fact that your offensive line can't keep defenders out of the backfield is going to bite you. I mean, Jalen Neal really struggled last Saturday. And I know, Purdue's perspective, they want to talk about how he can improve and make a big leap from week 1 to week 2. And he can, but he's got a long way to go.
It
And,
certainly appeared that way. Yeah.
I just think that that's an area where, suddenly maybe you don't turn the ball over,
Yeah.
but you're not able to generate any running game because they're not blocking up front, or you're getting sacked 6 times. That would be a cause for concern too.
Well, what scares you too offensively is, I thought David Blau danced his way out of 3 or 4 sacks. I thought his ability to escape pressure covered up that offensive line. You wonder when it gets to the point with David Blau where he takes the snap and his fundamental assumption is, I'm going to have a guy right on top of me.
Yeah.
And suddenly he deviates from the play called, or he
'Cause he
just
has
gets
to,
out of the
yeah.
pocket ASAP, and that hurts Purdue's chance to run a functional offense and to make the big plays I just talked about, because you're not letting plays develop.
Yeah. How this show works, by the way, you are welcome to send us questions via the chat room. We will try our best to answer them. Coach Dave Shondell will be on also in segment 2, and you can fire questions in. Brian and I will be segment 3 and talking men's basketball and men's basketball recruiting, so that could spur on a question or two. I want to also thank our sponsors, Hilton Garden Inn, when tomorrow's a big day, stay at HGI tonight. State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. John Basham and the good folks at Basham Rentals. Obviously has been a big supporter of Purdue sports over the years, and we appreciate that. And of course, Triple X and Route 66. We were at Triple X last week with Mitch Daniels for our show, and we appreciate Kerry and Greg Erzman, all they have done for this program. You look at this also. You have you say you have the schedule that you want if you're a Purdue fan, and yet. And you have some momentum. I mean, some from that. It seems to me that that's just the number one thing is how do you build on that, and then how do you deal with it when I'm not saying it's going to be a raucous environment tomorrow, but it is homecoming, and they are 3-0, and they have a new coach. There's going to be some energy in the stadium tomorrow.
Yeah, probably between 40 and 45,000,
Yeah.
I think. So, it'll be Purdue's first road game. I think that matters a little bit. I'm more interested maybe in seeing what Purdue's defense does, if it can carry any momentum over from last week, or whether what we saw last week was sort of the anomaly and that they could stop their run. Because, if they can't stop the run against Maryland again this week, and I think it's a much bigger challenge, A, with the skill position players that
Right.
the Terps have, and B, I think that zone read sometimes can be a real headache for defenses. So if Purdue regresses, back to what it was the first couple of weeks defensively, I think, that's the area where they're just not going to be able to keep up on the scoreboard.
Yeah, I mean, they have that whichever quarterback Maryland brings to
Yeah.
the table will be an interesting part of this, and I think that it still is a game of defense for Purdue. Brian, you look at this with a team that we're all
He's
looking-
itching to say something, I can tell.
Say something.
Discipline in all its forms
Okay.
tomorrow. Discipline against that zone read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Assignment-wise, discipline in terms of penalties. Purdue's gotten in close games on the road before, and they've not been able to
Finish them.
get over the top. I still remember that Minnesota game they had won a couple years ago that they lost because of an ill-advised, not that there's ever an advised personal foul penalty, but
Taylor
that personal
Richards, yeah.
foul penalty cost them the game. And You just, when you get in that kind of environment, and Purdue players have often said they almost prefer the road to home because there's actually life when you're playing on the road, whereas Ross-Ade Stadium right now kind of is what it is. When you get into that kind of visceral environment, can they keep a cool head about them and not make those silly mistakes that they've made in the past?
Yeah, we've talked, Kyle doesn't necessarily agree with me, or I don't know if I've made a strong statement about how Purdue has played better on the road, which is probably based on one game last year against Michigan State. And I suppose you could say under Darrell Hazel that they did win at Illinois. They certainly could have won the Minnesota game in 2014, but I do think that there's something to the fact that at least it can be a little bit of a us against them mentality, and the fact that walking into Ross-Ade Stadium, especially before when the band hits, before they were just in warm-ups, there's just not enough folks there to create a lot of energy.
They play 8 times better at home under Darrell Hazel than on the road. How many? He's got 9 wins, 8 wins,
Right, but
in his tenure.
you're counting the FCS teams. They don't go on the road to play FCS teams.
So 5 times.
You got to
better.
put probably weight that.
All their wins are at home. I mean, yeah, they've been in some games. Michigan State was sleeping through a rainy second half last year.
And Mark
There is
Hill made a
something to be
big play.
said for that.
And
You
Mark
know,
Hill made a big play.
Michigan State was up 21-0 at half.
Yeah.
Correct.
They
And
just
on the
kinda-
way to a game I thought was going to be 55
Right.
to nothing.
But at the same time, you could also point to the Nebraska game last year and say Nebraska turned the ball over 150 times. Now, if we want,
We're not
sitting here
embellishing anything here.
taking away from all of Purdue's wins, but you can kind of look at it both ways. That some of the teams Purdue's probably beaten probably haven't.
But at Illinois, they were
That's
fabulous.
That's
2
the
years ago.
one game.
I
That's
thought-
the one
I-
example.
I thought in
I
that
do
game,
think there's
they
something
got
mentally to playing in Ross-Ade
They
Stadium.
got a
It's hard
spark
for
from a
Purdue.
new quarterback and a new offense in that game. They
Yeah.
sucker punched Illinois, and Illinois wasn't particularly good that year, but I thought they got a real bump from the quarterback change. And
If you look at Austin Appleby's numbers from those first 3 games he started, he was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
when Mike Patrick sort of crowned Purdue the best 3-5 team in the country at that point.
and then opponents
then-
started scouting.
Yeah. And then Purdue lost every game.
Yeah.
The rest
Well,
of the way out.
I
First
think,
half of the
if I
Nebraska
recall
game
correctly,
before.
Danny Anthrop got hurt at Nebraska. I
That's
thought
right,
that really
yeah.
limited their offense from there on out. And then
Yeah.
they had that opportunity against Northwestern, I think, where you thought they had a chance to come and finish the season with some momentum, and they
And they
didn't play
didn't.
well against Northwestern, and then they lost that game they should have won at Indiana. So they had their opportunity there. But that's what we were talking about before. This is their opportunity again. You've just won a game.
Yeah.
It might not have been a flawless game by any means, but you just won a game, and now you have to go play a couple more winnable games on paper. So here's Purdue feeling good about itself theoretically right now, and they should have an opportunity to do something positive right now. Whether they do or not, we'll find out on Saturday.
DJ Durkin has done I don't know if they're still, I haven't looked recently in the Rivals recruiting rankings, but has made a mark in recruiting there. I mean, they have done a pretty decent job, at least in terms of commitments on the front end.
Under Armour,
Yeah, that helps. doesn't it? Yeah.
very popular.
Yeah, isn't that amazing how that works? Of course, Maryland associated with Under Armour, and that is that can be a little bit of a silver. DJ Durkin
Say that 10 times fast.
I know.
DJ Durkin.
Has obviously it has a bent from a defensive standpoint, coming from Michigan and Florida the last 2 years, spending time there. But this is a team now that you don't get the impression that they're going to put a lot of pressure on Purdue per se. Though we don't know how they're going to do. We don't know that because you would think they might also game plan around it.
you have to have watched the film, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you've got to load up the left side of Purdue's line and see if Purdue can handle blocking, blitzers coming from that direction. I think you
Yeah.
have to. I mean, anybody would do that if they saw the struggles that Purdue had there last week. They're not it doesn't look like they're a great rush team from the front 4, but they do have, I think, 8 sacks through 3
Yeah,
games. So
correct.
they have been able to get to the quarterback at least a little bit. Nevada hadn't sacked anyone, I don't think, all year. So they, really just got
They
their
had not.
one. They just
Yeah.
got their one last week. But, I would anticipate that Purdue will get pressured tomorrow. If they don't, I don't understand that at all. I mean, you have to bring pressure.
yeah, and I would think too that they will do some things to try to confuse Purdue from an offensive standpoint, which is kind of their whole MO anyway with the RPO. They definitely Maryland will try to bring that to the table.
Is RPO widely known enough to just say RPO?
Run pass option. That's just the one thing I learned this week, so I'm using it as much as I can.
Those are plays where you could either run or pass the ball based on.
Really? Run pass
Which
option means
actually
can run
you
or pass,
have
huh?
every get play. You have that option to do that.
I just want to make sure people know you come to the line and then you judge what you see and
Or
Either
you
run it
make,
or pass it,
or
yeah.
you make that choice while you're while you have the football in your hand and you're running in a particular direction. No, Marcus Freeman did a good job with that. If you haven't watched it on the website,
I'm not here to help.
you're not. I thought that he did a good job talking about that on Film with Freeman, which is on our site right now, if you can find it. When you just because it's kind of
Just
scroll down the way at the bottom. Did you have something else you wanted to add, or did we squelch you?
I was going to make a comment about, Purdue's got to get its personnel stuff figured out on the offensive line. I cover recruiting, obviously, so, and obviously the long-term outlook here is a little bit up in the air in terms of what's going to happen after this season, but, Purdue's been recruiting junior college offensive linemen every year,
Right.
basically. And last year, they got in a position where they basically had to sign one that they hadn't watched much.
Yeah.
They recruited for 3 days, hadn't seen in person, and then found out that he couldn't come in the spring a couple days after they signed him. And now that player, who obviously can improve, we're not writing him off for his career.
No, absolutely
Now
not.
you're in a position where he has to play for you, and you saw what happened last week. And
Jalen Neal.
now you're in a position where you could conceivably, have to go with him the rest of the way, or somebody of that nature the rest of the way. Purdue's got, if they're going to recruit junior college offensive linemen this year, they got to get on it now, because last year they brought one guy in for an official visit last year. He didn't come, and then they were right before the mid-year signing date. They had to scramble to find somebody in 3 days, and they probably didn't get their pick of the litter, so to speak.
Here's your trivia question, Brian. Who, and I don't know the answer, there probably isn't one, who was the last junior college recruited guard? Because it seems to me they're going to have to recruit at least one JC
Offensive
guard,
guard?
offensive guard.
Did they move Chris Cook?
Corey Clements moved to guard, but he was recruited as an offensive tackle.
They recruited a little defensive tackle years ago named Chris Cook. I
Offensive.
can't remember
And
if
did
they
they
moved.
move?
No, he was defensive tackle. I don't know if they moved or not. Otherwise, it would have been Aaron Cohn, I believe,
Yeah.
back in Joe Tiller's first recruiting class.
Mm-hmm.
I think. I mean,
Aaron Starnes.
Aaron Starnes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
mistaking him for.
And he
David
played
Cohn.
some.
Played a little bit, but
Not
there was a
much.
reason. Joe Tiller always used to say that, and we got to stop making comparisons
I
to
know.
Joe Tiller at some point. But Tiller used to say that it's really hard as a lineman to pick up the system fast enough to play.
Yeah.
Maybe that was their system as opposed to different systems. I don't know, but it's hard for junior college offensive linemen, apparently.
All right, our predictions are going up on the site, so we won't share them with you now, but Purdue swimming upstream. But again, it's
10 points. 10 points
Yeah.
seems like a lot to me. I don't
I know,
really
as you
get that.
keep
I
saying.
thought even with Perry Hills, I know there wasn't a line early in the week because the status of Hills was sort of up in the air. But now that he's playing, the line was, I think it's jumped from 10 to 10.5 a little bit all week. That seems a little high for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
For a team that, what was Maryland last year? They went 3
3 and
games.
9. 3 and 9.
I can't
So,
I don't know.
yeah.
Seems like a lot.
Yep,
It's
so-
not like they play in a huge hostile environment
No.
or anything.
They also played 3/4 of that season with an interim staff, too.
Yeah. 'Cause they
So
made
there was
the
kind of
change.
chaos.
Yeah, there was some. There
But
was some-
obviously, they started the season well enough to get their coach fired. So.
Yep, that is true. All right, we're going to take a short break. Bring out Dave Shondell, who has got nothing going on today. He just wanted to stop by for Golden Black Live. But we'll talk about Dave and his big weekend. His team plays Wisconsin tonight, and a huge match, 8 o'clock at Beelan Court. And then, of course, Minnesota comes calling on Sunday at 1:30. The coach will take it one match at a time, but we'll try to get a couple good questions in there edgewise. But we'll have that in 2 minutes on Golden Black Live.